Soon after Jinhua announced that he had been assassinated, his life and death situation became an indisputable hot topic among the citizens of Furious Tide City, discussed in every corner during tea time. The mastermind behind it all, Shu Tingyu, was more eager than anyone else to know Jinhua's final outcome, now that the situation had reached a critical moment, yet there was still no definitive news. In sheer desperation, he had no choice but to send his trusted aide to activate the secret agent, codenamed Snowman, planted beside Jinhua. As dusk fell, a mysterious figure quietly appeared outside Shu Tingyu's window. The identity of Snowman was kept concealed, and to ensure maximum security, even Shu Tingyu had never seen the person's true face. They could only communicate through a thin wall. Once they exchanged the secret code, Shu Tingyu couldn't wait to ask the critical question. The night Jinhua was assassinated, are you sure you saw his body? Snowman paused for a moment before answering in a hoarse voice. I wasn't present when the incident happened, but when it was my turn on duty, I only saw the body of the person secretly transported by Anzaishi. After that, I never saw Jinhua, Marquis, again. So, if there were no surprises, that body must have been his. And now, everyone in the castle is tight-lipped about the assassination that night, not speaking a word about it. However, Jean Mulan secretly entered Furious Tide City, and her arrival is still kept confidential to the outside world. Shu Tingyu was stunned. Jean Mulan had always been stationed at the mythical Turtle Marquis mansion. Now that she had left her roots behind to come here, could the assassination mission really have succeeded? Thinking of this, he immediately asked, what was Jean Mulan's expression when she came? She's not good at hiding emotions, so perhaps we can discern something from her demeanor. Snowman thought for a moment and replied, when I saw her, the confusion and bewilderment in her eyes seemed stronger than any sadness. Hearing this, Shu Tingyu immediately came to a conclusion in his mind. It seems that Jinhua's death was indeed a sudden event, and because the information was tightly sealed, even Jean Mulan was kept in the dark. Now that the Jean family has lost its backbone and all trade ships have stopped running, Jean Mulan is most likely being called upon to take charge. At this moment, Snowman suddenly spoke up and asked, now that the Jean family is destined to be the first victim of this conspiracy, what do you plan to arrange for me afterward? Upon hearing this, Shu Tingyu frowned, then reassured him, don't worry, go back for now. I guarantee that within the next few years, I will make sure to place you in a more important and promising position. Snowman remained silent for a long time after hearing this. Goodbye. He knew in his heart that this was just a pie in the sky painted by Shu Tingyu, and that his current situation left him with no leverage to refuse. After Snowman left, Shu Tingyu fell into deep thought. Now, the entire Yu Kingdom was like a complicated, intricate chessboard, and after removing Jinhua, the most difficult to control was King Ning Yuanxian. Now, he just hoped that Ning Yuanxian wouldn't disturb this chess game. At this moment, the Shu family had already invested significant resources into this matter, so this battle could only succeed. It must not fail. Meanwhile, the situation in the entire Yu Kingdom grew increasingly tense. Sovereign Ning Yuanxian, in order to regain his face and prestige, had now focused all his attention on the game with King Wu. To this end, he even gathered the Northern Guard Lord Nangong Ao, 3rd Prince Ning Qi, and Duke Wu Zhaozhong under his command to form a powerful military lineup. He also drew 60,000 soldiers from Bianzhao's 100,000-strong army, forming a 100,000-strong force stationed on the defense line of Northern Sky Province, which made Bianzhao so angry that he smashed a table. In this move, you should know, Glamorous Province was the weakest in defense and the most dangerous region in the Yu Kingdom, yet Sovereign had forcibly drawn away most of the main forces. The remaining 40,000 soldiers would find it nearly impossible to hold Glamorous Province. King Wu had originally only intended to provide cover for the actions of the Su family in the rear, never planning to actually go to war, but he never expected his provocative actions to completely enrage Ning Yuanxian, forcing him to lead the army personally and prepare for a decisive battle of the nation. In desperation, he could only grit his teeth, desperately gathering troops towards the Wuiwa border. In just half a month, the two kings gathered 200,000 soldiers at the border, ready for battle at any moment. However, this was exactly what Shu Tingyu wanted, as the Hidden Origin Society's loan of 2.3 million gold coins to Sovereign for military expenses was meant to distract him with the northern conflict. With this, their plan in Furious Tide City could proceed smoothly. The scene then shifted back to White Knight County. When Su Quan's army arrived at the city gates and saw the fleeing mobs, he felt confused. This group of rioters should have already entered the city. Why are they fleeing outside? Just as he was filled with doubt, he unintentionally spotted two figures standing on the city wall. When he recognized that it was Shen Lang and Zhang Chong, his breath instantly stopped. How is this possible? Why are these two here? Could it be that they really captured White Knight County in just one night? Xiao Wuchang, you useless failure. The plan was set. We were supposed to cooperate, wipe out Zhang and Shen Lang's rebels. But now, not only did you fail to hold White Knight County, you let this mob get out of control. Wait until I see you. I'll deal with you personally. Fuming more and more, he shouted, all troops, listen up. Kill every one of these rioters. Not a single one left. Seize all the loot they've taken. As soon as his words were heard, Su's cavalry began slaughtering them mercilessly. Seeing this from the city wall, Shen Lang couldn't help but yell, "You fools, don't run towards the square. Run along the city wall." The panicked rioters, hearing Shen Lang shout, immediately snapped out of their daze, and they quickly ran toward the base of the city wall, pressed against the wall, scattering to both sides and starting to run. Seeing this, Kuan angrily shouted, "Hurry, block them all. Not a single one gets away." Upon hearing Kuan's command, the three-eyed evil bandits immediately spurred their horses and chased toward the city wall. At this moment, Zhang, standing on the city wall, saw the opportunity and gave the order, and countless arrows rained down like a storm onto Su's cavalry. Seeing this, Kuan nearly went mad, cursing incoherently, "Shen Lang, Zhang Chong, you're simply asking for death. Wait for me, just wait." After speaking, he turned to his side and said, "Master Ban Ruo, Master Kunan, please make sure to help me take them all down in one sweep." Master Ban Ruo, upon hearing this, gave him a sideways glance and coldly said, "I can't concern myself with other matters. I'm only interested in Li Qianqiu. The lives of others are none of my business." Upon hearing this, the corners of Kuan's mouth twitched involuntarily. "All right, then I'll leave Li Qianqiu to you. As for Zhang Chong, I'll leave him to Master Kunan. And as for that little bastard Shen Lang, I'll personally take his head off to vent my hatred." Kuan led Master Ban Ruo and Master Kunan to the city wall. The three of them used great lightness skills to leap onto the wall. Master Ban Ruo took the lead, wielding his whisk and attacking Sword King Li Qianqiu. Li Qianqiu reacted swiftly, drawing his sword and blocking the strike. With a failed hit, Master Ban Ruo retreated a half step. Seeing this, Kuan secretly laughed to himself. "Just now, you were so arrogant. I thought Master Ban Ruo was so powerful, but it turns out you're not even a match for Sword King. I never expected you to kill him. I just needed you to hold him off." On the other side, Master Kunan also wielded his staff and fiercely attacked Zhang Chong. At the critical moment, the disguised princess suddenly appeared in front of Zhang Chong, blocking the strike with her sword. Then, using the momentum, Princess made a swift turn, her sword gleaming coldly, and pressed straight toward Master Kunan's vital spots. After several exchanges, Master Kunan found it increasingly difficult to defend himself. At this moment, he was filled with confusion. This person's martial arts are so high, on par with a grandmaster. Who could they possibly be? At the same time, seeing that the two had already begun to fight, Kuan, without hesitation, charged toward Shen Lang, his target clear. Now, as long as he broke through Big Fool's defense, killing Shen Lang would be a piece of cake. He first swung his sword, striking with full force at Big Fool. Even though Big Fool blocked the blow, Kuan's strength was nearly on par with Sunan. The powerful shock from his inner strength still forced Big Fool to step back. Immediately, taking advantage of Big Fool's unsteady footing, Kuan quickly dodged and attacked toward Shen Lang behind him. At that critical moment, a figure suddenly charged forward, blocking in front of Shen Lang. Zhang Chong has drawn his sword. Kuan was immediately shocked. Why is Zhang Chong here? Wasn't he supposed to be killed by Master Kunan? At this point, there was no time for him to think further. He directly swung his sword and engaged Zhang Chong in combat. However, Zhang Chong had still underestimated Kuan's strength and was cut on the chest by his sword. Just as the second strike was about to land, Big Fool beside them raised his steel knife and swung it directly at Kuan. Even though Kuan's martial arts were high and his inner strength strong, when faced with a blow from someone with innate divine power, he had no means of defending himself and was sent flying by Big Fool's strike. A moment later, Master Ban Ruo was also severely injured. Below the city wall, the defeated Kuan and Master Kunan could only watch as Master Ban Ruo fell from the wall. Kuan, unwilling to accept this, looked toward the city wall. "Where did I go wrong? I meticulously planned every step. Why did we still lose? And that man with overwhelming strength, who could it be?" Just as he was full of doubt, Zhang Chong on the city wall issued another command. "Archers, prepare, fire." As soon as the order was given, Kuan immediately snapped back to his senses, and now he had no time to think about those unresolved mysteries. Before the arrows rained down, he quickly led his men to flee in a panic. Although the mission ended in failure, Kuan felt it wasn't entirely without gain. After all, his sword had been coated with poison, and the wound he inflicted on Zhang Chong was bound to take his life, just as Kuan had expected. Zhang Chong, who was commanding the battle at that moment, suddenly turned pale. A sharp pain shot through his wound, and he collapsed to the ground. Shen Lang was shocked when he saw this, and hurriedly used his X-ray vision to scan Zhang Chong's body. "I clearly treated Zhang Chong's wound earlier. It shouldn't have been serious." With doubts in his mind, he connected to his smart brain and began analyzing the blood from the wound. "Lord Zhang has been poisoned. The situation is critical." Shen Lang had no time to think further and shouted loudly, "Big Fool, suck the poisoned blood out of Lord Zhang's wound." It's important to know that Big Fool's bloodline had an extraordinary talent. While he wasn't immune to all poisons, most poisons couldn't harm him at all. At this moment, hearing Shen Lang's call, Big Fool didn't hesitate for a second, immediately rushed to Zhang Chong's side, bent down, and forcefully sucked at the wound. With that one gulp, Zhang Chong felt as though the world was spinning. He nearly fainted. The amount of blood he spat out stunned Shen Lang. This wasn't just sucking poisoned blood. It was like Big Fool was draining half of Zhang Chong's life away. Afterward, Big Fool proudly sought praise from Shen Lang. Looking at the pale Zhang Chong, Shen Lang felt helpless and awkward. He he could only force a few words of praise. After dealing with Big Fool, Shen Lang took out a scalpel, leaned over to Zhang Chong, and said, "Lord Zhang, I need to cut away the poison flesh from your wound. There's no sedative here, so bear with it a little." Saying this, he swiftly began cutting and stitching with precision. At this moment, Zhang Chong looked down at the wound on his chest, listening to Shen Lang's instructions in his ear, and couldn't help but sigh. He had been saved by Shen Lang again. Shen Lang didn't pay much attention to it. After all, hadn't Zhang Chong risked his life to step forward earlier, blocking a sword for him, since they would be cooperating in the future? It didn't matter who owed whom. Afterward, he helped Zhang Chong sit on a chair and said, "This first step, we can consider it a huge victory. Lord Zhang, this battle has already forced Sunan to the point where he has no choice but to strike. Probably, before he can unite with the Chan kingdom, he'll rebel." After hearing this, Zhang Chong cupped his hands and said, "Young Master Shen is right. The strategy that Sunan devised to kill 3 birds with 1 stone was indeed ruthless, but his only failure was his greed." Shen Lang smiled upon hearing this, but said nothing, quietly beginning to apply medicine and bandage Zhang Chong's wound. Zhang Chong did not speak further. Shen Lang was someone who cared nothing for money or power, so for this battle, he could use the huge amount of gold from the tens of thousands of commoners to lure the Su family into the trap. Now, the Su family had suffered a great defeat due to their greed, and not only had he taken White Knight County, but he had also acquired enough gold, enough to continue expanding his army. Sunan's only option now was to make the situation worse and attack the city immediately. As he thought about this, Shen Lang had already finished treating his wound, then stepped forward and said, "Lord Zhang, within at most 3 days, Sunan will announce his rebellion and break away from the Yu Kingdom. His more than 10,000 troops will then begin to wildly attack White Knight County. By then, the pressure you'll face will likely be enormous." Zhang Chong smiled upon hearing this and said, "Young Master Shen, don't worry. Although I only have 4,000 soldiers, I will definitely give it my all. If the city stands, the people stand. If the city falls, we die." Shen Lang bowed in response and said, "Then from here on, it all depends on you, Lord Zhang. Please, you must hold on. At most, in a month, I will lead the army to assist you. With our combined forces, we will attack Sunan's rebel army from both inside and out, and wipe them out completely. No more words. We must leave before Su Kuan's army reorganizes and surrounds us. Lord Zhang, take care." After Shen Lang left, the princess approached and asked, "Where is Shen Lang going? Shouldn't he stay in the city, waiting for His Majesty's main army to march south?" Zhang Chong shook his head. "Young Master Shen's plan is to rely on our 2 forces to completely eliminate the Su family." The princess was shocked upon hearing this. "Has Shen Lang gone mad, or have you gone mad? The combined strength of our 2 armies is only 4,000. Holding off Sunan's rebel army for a month would be considered a victory, but to rely on these few thousand troops to destroy the tens of thousands of soldiers from Suchan, that's pure fantasy." Zhang Chong chuckled lightly. "It's not 4,000 soldiers, but young Master Shen leading 200 men, who will first eliminate Urutai's 50,000 troops, and do so within half a month." The princess felt a chill down her spine upon hearing this. "Lord Zhang, you actually believe such absurd nonsense? Don't forget His Majesty's command. He only instructed you 2 to hold off Sunan's rebel army, not to annihilate them." Zhang stood up and said, "Your servant has no choice. His Majesty sent me and young Master Shen to White Knight County. On the surface, I'm the leader and he's the assistant, but young Master Shen is too outstanding in both battle achievements and strategy. To avoid conflict, it's better that he leads. Princess, the situation has reached a point where we must act, or the opportunity will be lost. I hope you will not stop us any further." At the same time, in Su Kuan's military camp, a soldier hurriedly ran into the command tent. He presented the follow-up battlefield report to Su Kuan. When Su Kuan saw the amount listed on the scroll, he was shocked. So many violent mobs, and yet only 300,000 gold coins were seized. The rest had completely vanished. At that moment, he suddenly thought of Shen Lang's operation, and it seemed that the 5,000 mobs who looted the most had all been lured into the city and slaughtered in advance. As for the gold coins, it goes without saying, they would be used to supplement Zhang Chong's military funds. After all my army's hard work, it's all been for nothing, and in the end, the benefits were all taken by others. He then gritted his teeth and asked, "How many gold coins did we lose this time?" The soldier, trembling, answered softly, "According to the previous count, the Western merchants' savings from over a decade have been completely looted, and the total is estimated to be over 1 million. Hearing this, Su Kuan felt a wave of dizziness. How could the losses be so great? Originally, my lord's careful planning intended to kill 3 birds with 1 stone, but now it has all backfired. What should we do next? Do we need to rebel early and attack the city before the Chan army arrives?" Just as he was full of anxious hesitation, a scout came to report, "Lord, Shen Lang has led 200 soldiers out of the eastern gate of White Knight County." Upon hearing this, Su Kuan froze. What is this little poisonous snake up to now? Does he plan to make a move on the Chan country? The monk, Kuan, suddenly stood up and walked outside. Realizing this, Su Kuan quickly asked where he was going. Kuan's gaze was cold. Without looking back, he spat out 3 words, "Kill Shen Lang." Upon hearing this, Master Banrua also didn't want to stay in the camp any longer, and directly followed Kuan, leading 2,000 monks soldiers to pursue and kill Shen Lang and his group. Seeing this, Kuan, unsure of what to do, immediately called Yong, urging him to quickly ride and deliver this bad news to Sunan. How to proceed from here could only be decided by the Lord. The scene shifted to Yu Kingdom, Northern Sky Province, Weno Castle. At this moment, the entire city had turned into a military camp, and Sovereign Ning Yuanxian, in order to save face, borrowed money from the Hidden Origin Society to fund the military, personally leading the army to march and, along a defensive line stretching for dozens of miles, gathered 100,000 troops. With the financial incentives and the sovereign's personal leadership, the morale of Yu Kingdom's army surged, and after several consecutive proactive offensives, they had won some significant victories. Outside the Wu Kingdom camp, 3rd Prince Ning Chi was calling out a challenge at the front line. At his side, the fierce General Lan Bao was also shouting madly, using all sorts of foul language to insult King Wu. Lan Bao was a war orphan left behind after the Great Flame Empire's final battle with the Jiangli Empire 20 years ago. Marquis Zhongyao adopted him, but soon realized that this child had a violent nature and a strong urge to kill. Fearing that he would bring trouble when he was training with Master Lan Dao, Marquis Zhong decided to remove his Zhong surname and renamed him Lan Bao. At this moment, in the Wu Kingdom's camp, Lan Bao's provocative shouts, like thunder, echoed throughout the entire camp. Inside the tent, King Wu Qi appeared calm on the surface, but from the veins bulging and his slightly pale knuckles, it was clear that he was boiling with anger inside. Just then, General Wu Ji of the Wu Kingdom entered to report, "Your Majesty, the King of Yu has increased his forces. It is said that the troops were also drawn from Glamorous Province." King Wu froze for a moment. Glamorous Province already sent most of its 100,000 troops to him, and now he wants to summon private troops from Bianzhou. Ning Yuanxian must have completely lost his mind. After a moment, King Wu, now calm, fell into deep thought. Ning Yuanxian may be mad, but I cannot follow him into madness. What I want is to take advantage of Sunan's rebellion, to seize Thunderous Island, not to waste our national strength here with him. Once the Suchang army sweeps through Western Celestial Province, Ning Yuanxian's personal expedition will become a joke, and at that time, I will avenge myself by taking back the 9 counties we ceded. At this moment, Wu Ji suddenly said again, "Your Majesty, Ning Yuanxian is acting so aggressively now. I fear that one day he might suddenly do something unexpected and directly engage our army in battle. With our current military strength, I'm afraid we will suffer a huge loss then." Upon hearing this, King Wu furrowed his brows tightly. "Then let's draw 20,000 more troops from the west. Glamorous Province currently has less than 40,000 troops defending. We don't need to waste so many forces there. Now, the King of Yu is in the city, and we are in the field. We must maintain our current military advantage." Before he finished speaking, a soldier rushed in excitedly. "The Lord of Skywind City, Chiu Hao, has officially pledged allegiance to our country. According to Hidden Origin Society's confidential report, Jin Shua has been assassinated." When this news came out, King Wu was overjoyed. Isn't this the opportunity to seize Furious Tide City and Thunderous Islands? The Thunderous Islands are close to Yu Kingdom. Once we capture them, it would be like blocking Yu Kingdom's eastern gate. Ning Yuanxian is getting old. He's only focused on the land, but doesn't realize that maritime trade is becoming increasingly prosperous. Seizing maritime trade is so important. With this thought, he no longer hesitated, immediately giving the order, "Inform the army to board the ships immediately, travel downstream, and gather in Skywind City. Join forces with Chiu Hao's army and march south to capture Furious Tide City. We must take the Thunderous Islands." On the other side, in the King of Yu's camp, Sovereign Ning Yuanxian was studying the strategic map, listening to Lan Bao's shouting and cursing outside, his brows furrowing slightly. Ning Yuanxian was a man of great elegance and cultivation. He couldn't stand hearing vulgar words in his presence, but although Lan Bao was crude and unbearable, he had become almost invincible in the recent battles. Helplessly, Ning Yuanxian could only grit his teeth and endure it. At this moment, Eunuch Li entered and asked, "Your Majesty, the mighty Duke has sent someone to ask if it's time to take action." Ning Yuanxian thought for a moment, then shook his head. Now is not the time yet. After a pause, he continued, "Li Ji, do you know when the enemy is most vulnerable?" Li Ji thought for a moment, then replied, "It must be when Yu Kingdom is in the most perilous situation." Ning Yuanxian nodded. "Correct. And when Sunan rebels, it will be the most dangerous time for Yu Kingdom, and also the time when Wu Kingdom is most careless. At that time, it will be the perfect moment for Bianzhou to launch a full-scale attack. We will strike a world-shocking battle, slaughter the Wu army, leaving their bodies everywhere, and rout them completely, which will deter the surrounding countries, and scare Chu Kingdom into completely abandoning any thoughts of invasion. Send the order. Tell Jin Tua to continue feigning weakness, close White Night Pass, and show no signs of moving south." At this point, Ning Yuanxian seemed to have thought of something, and sighed again. "I hope Zhang Chong and Shen Lang won't disappoint me. I hope these two, along with Jin Tua, can trap Sunan's rebel army completely in White Night County." Li Ji trembled upon hearing this, but he dared not say anything more. He felt that Sovereign was now gambling everything. Zhang Chong and Shen Lang together had only a few thousand troops, and even with Jin Tuo's army supporting them, it would be extremely difficult to stop Sunan's rebel army. If Sovereign lost this gamble, he would would face countless blades. At this moment, a small eunuch rushed in with a secret letter, bringing urgent news. The sovereign took it directly. After reading the letter, he couldn't help but feel a chill. Shen Lang, have you gone mad? How many people did you kill? According to the letter, the entire White Knight County, whether directly killed or indirectly died. It had at least been tens of thousands. But then, his heart was filled with intense joy. Shen Lang, I used to think you were just a little clever, but I didn't expect you to be bold enough to wreak havoc in all of White Knight County. The wealth accumulated by those Western merchants for over a decade was completely looted by you. You truly are ruthless. He then handed the letter to Li Ji, saying, from now on, Shen Lang's reputation in White Knight County will make people wary. He acted obediently in front of me, but once he was in White Knight County, he threw my orders to the wind. When the general is away, the king's orders aren't followed. It really matches that saying. At this point, Li Ji, still confused by the sovereign's words, was stunned when he saw the contents of the letter. Tens of thousands? Looting over 1 million? Is this the same pretty boy who used to sleep in the same bed as Princess Ning? Before he could recover from his shock, he heard the sovereign's stern voice, deliver my imperial decree. Shen Lang is audacious and reckless. Give him 10 lashes as a warning. Zhang Chong has failed in disciplining his subordinates. Such actions will surely chill the hearts of the people of White Knight County. Just as he spoke, Sovereign couldn't help but feel another surge of joy in his heart. Sunan will probably be forced to rise up before he can merge with Chang Kingdom. It seems that Shen Lang's actions have bought us the perfect opportunity. Thinking this, the Sovereign immediately gave another order. Go notify the mighty Duke. Prepare to take action. Our world-shaking battle is about to begin. The next day, Su Yong brought back news of the Su Kuan army's crushing defeat to the distant guard Marquis. Sunan, looking at the secret letter in his hands, could not hide the shock on his face. Why had this happened? His carefully planned strategy of killing 3 birds with 1 stone, though not foolproof, was highly likely to succeed. Yet now, he found himself in a situation where he had lost both his wife and his troops. Over 1 million gold coins had vanished like water through his fingers. Even the usually calm Sunan couldn't help feeling dizzy. He had never expected this. Sunan, who had been undefeated on the battlefield for decades, had never tasted defeat. Yet Shen Lang, who had only been in White Knight County for a few days, had already led him to 2 losses, this time with heavy casualties. At that moment, Sunan stood by the window, looking out at the distant snowy mountains, and sighed. Since things had come to this, there was no point in worrying further. Fortunately, the overall situation had not been affected. Now, with Zhang Chong having merely over 3,000 troops, he could hardly stir up much trouble. Even if Shen Lang caused more disturbances, he couldn't conjure up troops out of thin air. Just then, his confidant Su Yong suddenly said, My lord, Lord Su Quan's army has now surrounded White Knight County. I'm not sure whether we should attack now. Hearing this, Sunan fell into deep thought again. Should they attack? If they just surrounded but did not fight, wouldn't that be too advantageous for Zhang Chong? They must not act impulsively. Right now, the Su family needed to sweep through the southern part of the Western Celestial Province as quickly as possible. If they acted rashly, wouldn't that spark a major upheaval in Yu Kingdom? After much consideration, he turned to Su Yong and asked, Is there any movement at White Knight Pass under Jingtua and Urutai's army? Where are they now? Su Yong replied, Lord, the gates of White Knight Pass are still tightly closed, and King Urutai's army of 40,000 is now less than 100 miles from Aruna's tribe. Once they defeat Aruna, they can immediately move east to join us. Sunan nodded and then continued to ask, What about the states of Chu and Wu? They are the biggest beneficiaries of the upheaval in Yu Kingdom. King Wu has the Hidden Origin Society backing him, and they are determined to secure the trading rights to the Thunderous Islands and the Eastern Sea. But Chu can't just sit idly by, can they? Su Yong replied with a troubled look. The Eastern Seas are too far from us, and it's truly hard to get timely intelligence. Lord Su Quan is still waiting for your command. Lord, what do you think? Should we go to war? At this, Sunan furrowed his brows, pondered for a long time, and then said, If we fight, it should be Wu and Chu, the big players, who do so. The Su family can still wait. It's only half a month. We must remain steady. Go tell the envoy from Chu, when the Chu army moves, then the Su family will act. Sunan managing to suppress his impulse to rebel prematurely was something Shen Lang had not anticipated. He had thought his maneuver would force the Su family into a corner where they would have no choice but to act. Unexpectedly, this old fox could keep his cool, insisting on not pouncing until he seized the rabbit. However, Sunan was not without his moves. The Su family has always claimed to have only 5,000 private troops, but now more than 10,000 troops have suddenly appeared, not to mention the several thousand bandits from the Three-Eyed Evil. Moreover, wandering warriors from the west and monk soldiers from the Great Calamity Temple have also begun to gather in Su territory. The scene shifts to the Yu army's camp. At this moment, King Ning Yuanxian is examining a secret letter sent by Princess Ning Jie. But when he saw the content of the letter, he nearly jumped up. Shen Lang had taken only 200 cavalry to annihilate the main force of Chang King. Shen Lang, have you gone mad? I made it very clear. You were just to cooperate with Zhang Chong and Jingtua to contain the Sunan rebels for a month or two. What does containment mean? Do you not understand? At this moment, Ning Yuanxian really regretted sending Shen Lang to White Night County. Fortunately, the 200 cavalry Shen Lang brought were his own men. Even if things went south, at least Zhang Chong and Jing Tuo could cover for him. However, just as Ning Yuanxian had reassured himself, a courier rushed in breathlessly. "Your Majesty, there is an urgent military dispatch." Hearing this, Ning Yuanxian's heart, which had just settled, hung high again. What now? Did Sunan mobilize his troops ahead of schedule? With a troubled heart, Ning Yuanxian opened a secret letter. But when he saw the content, he was about to explode. "Thunderous Islands, the Lord of Skywind City, Qiu Hao, has defected to Wu. Mythical turtle Marquis Jin Zhuo was assassinated and killed. Wu's army of 30,000 moved south, pressing directly towards Furious Tide City." At this moment, Ning Yuanxian was truly shocked and enraged. Who would have thought? Wu Qi, your real target was the Thunderous Islands. With Jin Zhuo dead and Qiu Hao having defected, how could they possibly resist the Wu army now? Suddenly, he seemed to understand something. It's the Hidden Origin Society. Yes, it must be their doing, lending to me gratuitously with one hand while funding Wu with the other. Hidden Origin Society, do you really see yourselves as the puppet masters behind the scenes? He quickly calmed down and muttered to himself after a moment of thought, this might not be so bad. If King Wu focuses all his energy on the Thunderous Islands, it could actually work in my favor. As for Furious Tide City, since it is the Jin family's territory, let them guard it themselves. Whether they can hold it, that's up to fate now. Meanwhile, in the secret chamber of the Furious Tide City Castle, Jin Zhuo looked helplessly at Jin Mulan and sighed. "Jin Mulan, your father is already considered dead to the outside world. Could you try to seem a bit more sorrowful when you appear in public?" Hearing this, Jin Mulan said with difficulty, "Father, I really can't act. You're fine, yet you ask me to pretend to be grieving all the time. I really don't know how to do that." At that moment, Jin Hui, after a long hesitation, decided to throw caution to the wind and blurted out to Jin Mulan, "Young Master Shen has been unfaithful. Young Master Shen has already slept with Princess Ning in the capital city, not just once." Upon hearing this, Jin Mulan was stunned on the spot. The next second, tears burst from her eyes. "What are you talking about? How could my husband deceive me? He told me he and Ning Yan were just like brothers and would never mix any personal feelings." At this moment, Jin Mulan's heart felt as if it had been shattered into countless pieces. However, unexpectedly, Ziqian, seeing this, directly said, "Exactly, miss. Your expression right now is spot on. If you find it hard to cry these days, just think about young Master Shen's infidelity." Jin Zhuo, seeing his daughter so heartbroken, was filled with guilt. Is this too cruel to Jin Mulan? Just then, Jin Zhong came to report, "My lord, the Wu army has already started moving south." Upon hearing this, Jin Zhuo immediately stood up and shouted sternly, "The battle for Furious Tide City is unavoidable. All forces must be on high alert and prepare for battle." At this moment, Jin Mulan could no longer dwell on romantic sentiments. She held back her tears, donned her armor, and prepared to join the fight. "Despicable man, just you wait. When you get home, I will make sure you pay." In the territory of the Chang, at the foot of the snowy mountains, the newly established Snow Mountain tribe under Aruna's leadership has grown into a large tribe of nearly 100,000 people. But because of her rapid rise and her alliance with Shen Lang, she has become a thorn in the side of the new Chang king, or Utai. Shortly after Utai had killed several of his brothers, he personally led an army of 40,000 to attack Aruna's tribe. Upon hearing this news, the entire tribe's herdsmen fell into panic. At this moment, the first army suddenly stopped 50 miles away from the neighboring tribe. The leading officer, riding a tall horse, arrogantly shouted towards the defenders of the Snow Mountain tribe, "Listen, you traitorous herdsmen, I, the new king of Chang, am willing to pardon your crimes of treason. Those who do not wish to die, come forth with your cattle and horses to greet the new king. Those who remain obstinate will be executed without mercy." After these words spread throughout the tribe, most of the inherently gentle herdsmen, in order to save their lives, reluctantly followed Urutai's orders and began to leave the Snow Mountain tribe with their livestock. Aruna learned of this from her confidant, Yin Yang. Though her heart ached for the disloyalty of these people, she did not stop them. In her view, even ants cling to life. How much more so humans? What right did she have to ask these innocent herdsmen to die for her? Afterward, Aruna even took the initiative to prepare enough cheese and dried meat for those herdsmen who wanted to leave to sustain them on their journey. This act immediately filled the herdsmen with shame, and they knelt before Aruna's palace, begging for her forgiveness. Some, timid and fearing death, chose to leave the tribe, but many more herdsmen decided to stay, to stand with Aruna against Urutai's great army. 3 days later, on the tribal parade ground, Aruna looked at the soldiers lined up neatly in front of her, her heart filled with mixed emotions. She sighed softly and asked, "How many soldiers do we still have?" Her confidant replied, "Your Majesty, we still have 3,000. Aruna was immediately surprised. She had thought everyone would flee, but instead, 3,000 soldiers had chosen to stay for her. After a brief silence, Aruna stepped forward, her tone firm, and said, "Utai may be my brother, but he is cruel and ruthless. I am sure that this time, he will show us no mercy. I admit, with our current strength, we simply cannot defeat him. If you choose to stay, there is only one outcome, death." However, before she could finish, her confidant Yin Yang stood up and said loudly, "Fellow soldiers, our queen has bestowed great kindness upon us. When smallpox ravaged ravaged. It was Her Majesty who allowed us to be vaccinated with cowpox for free, which shielded us from the epidemic. She has led us to a life of abundance and peace. Now, as Her Majesty faces peril and great hardship looms, how can we ignore it and be those who flee for fear of death? Even if it means death, we will fight alongside our queen until the very last moment. As he finished speaking, a fiery will to fight ignited in the soldiers' eyes, and they shouted in unison, to advance or retreat together, to defend our queen to the death. Just then, a messenger hurriedly came forward to report, Your Majesty, it's bad news. A cavalry troop is advancing towards us. Aruna was immediately startled. Isn't Urutai's army still 50 miles away? Could they be planning a sneak attack? Thinking this, she immediately shouted sternly, If Utai wants to ambush us, then let's go out and fight them. The warriors of the Snow Mountain tribe would rather die in battle than be cowardly fools who cling to life. After saying this, she picked up her weapon, mounted a white ox, and led 3,000 soldiers in a fierce charge. However, when she reached the mouth of the valley and saw who was approaching, she stood frozen in place. Standing not far away was the man she had been longing for, Big Fool. Big Fool was waving his arms, running towards Aruna, and shouting, Wife, don't be afraid, I'm here. Second Fool said he would help you wipe out Urutai's tens of thousands of troops and make you the queen of the entire Chang nation. But Aruna could hardly care about these words. She threw down her broadsword, leapt from the white ox, and lunged towards Big Fool. Like a little woman yearning for her husband's return, she just wanted to throw herself into the arms of the man she loved. Big Fool caught Aruna, but what he did next shocked everyone. He actually ripped open Aruna's clothes. The two of them, in front of hundreds of people, began to make love obliviously, leaving everyone present utterly stunned. Even Shen Lang was so shocked by the scene before him that he was at a loss for words. This Big Fool may be a fool, but you, Aruna, are you crazy too? In full view of everyone, you two are doing this. Are we just heir to you? Helplessly, Shen Lang had no choice but to order Wulai, Quick, bring some sisters over with a curtain and surround them. Don't let others see my sister-in-law's body. 2 hours later, Big Fool and Aruna finally came back. Upon seeing Shen Lang, Big Fool's face turned bright red, and he blurted out, I'm going back to my room. Then he hurriedly left. On the other hand, Aruna seemed completely unfazed, as if nothing had happened. She walked straight up to Shen Lang and said calmly, Young Master Shen, I think I might be pregnant. Can you confirm it for me? Shen Lang nodded, took her pulse, and quietly activated his X-ray vision to check. When he saw the fetus in Aruna's womb, he was shocked, truly deserving to be Big Fool's child. Only 3 months in and already so well-formed and strong, it's really impressive. He immediately shared the news with Aruna. Aruna was overjoyed. If the child is developing so well, he will surely become the strongest man in our tribe. However, as she thought of Urutai's army stationed 50 miles away, the joy on her face gradually faded and her mood became somber. After a moment of thought, she looked up and asked, Young Master Shen, Big Fool just said that you could help me defeat Utai. Is that true? Shen Lang nodded, his tone firm. I can not only help you eliminate Urutai's tens of thousands of troops, but also make you the queen of the entire Chang nation. Upon hearing this, Aruna's expression became complicated. After all, Utai was her blood brother, and she couldn't bring herself to commit fratricide, but his brutal nature was no less than their father's. If she conceded, the entire tribe would likely face a dire fate. Seeing her hesitation, Shen Lang continued, If the Su and Chang combine, within at most 10 years, the Su family will have swallowed the Chang nation. By then, the Uru family will cease to exist, the Skywolf Heron Totem will become history, and the entire Chang capital city will belong to the Su family. Before he could finish, Aruna raised her hand to stop him. Don't talk to me about these grand national affairs. I don't understand them, nor am I interested. All I know now is that Utai is coming to kill me, and I must retaliate. But I also know that I can't beat him by myself. Even if I had 30,000 soldiers, not just 3,000, I might still not be able to defeat him. Hearing this, Shen Lang chuckled. As long as you follow my plan, defeating Utai won't be a problem. Aruna nodded seriously after hearing this. No problem. Even though you're a scoundrel and have inappropriate thoughts about my master, I know you've never harmed those around you, and you've always kept your word. So, I trust you. Hearing this, Shen Lang was at a loss for words. Why does this sound so odd? Are you praising me or scolding me? Shen Lang arrived at the Snow Mountain tribe and helped Aruna devise a complete battle plan. Meanwhile, Chang King Utai led his army to march overnight, stopping to camp just 20 miles from the Snow Mountain tribe. He had a quite comfortable journey, only because the Su family had sent him another beautiful young woman with 3 skilled Su beauties to keep him company. If not for Urutai's robust physique, he might have been overwhelmed. However, Utai was not as rash and brainless as his father. He was well aware of the Su family's calculations. They ostensibly wanted to unify Su and Chang and make him king, but in reality, they wanted to control him tightly with these 3 women, turning him into a puppet at their mercy. But well, as long as he, Utai, remained in power for one more day, it wasn't really certain who would swallow whom in the end. As soon as I've dealt with Aruna and entered the Western Celestial Province, how I proceed will certainly not be up to the Su family to comment. Just then, a chant of May the gods protect the queen reached his ears. In an instant, the smile on Urutai's face voice vanished, replaced by uncontrollable rage. What queen? In the entire Chang nation, there can only be one king, me, Utai. He then coldly commanded, someone, go slaughter those herdsmen. Upon hearing this, Suemo quickly spoke up to stop him. Great king, do not be angered. These lowly people have merely been bought by Aruna's small favors. Once we take her life tomorrow and occupy the Snow Mountain tribe, won't they have only you as the legitimate king? The Su family members also chimed in. Exactly, great king. In the future, you are to be a ruler on equal footing with the nations of Chu in Yu Kingdom. These lowly people are just rats on the ground. How could they understand the thoughts of a hawk in the sky? After listening to their advice, most of the anger in Urutai's heart dissipated instantly. Seeing this, the three women took the opportunity to pull him towards the tent to enjoy their conjugal pleasures, but remembering that a tough battle awaited him the next day and that he must abstain before the fight, Utai resisted and ultimately pushed them away. Moments later, he walked alone onto the plain outside the military camp, facing the bright moon above. Suddenly, a familiar figure ahead caught his attention. He walked forward and asked in a deep voice, Su Jianting, what are you doing here so late? Hearing Urutai's voice, Su Jianting was momentarily startled. Then he bowed with a fist and said, returning to the great king, I was just gazing at the stars, trying to feel how the starry sky here differs from that of our homeland. After hearing this, Utai burst into laughter and said, under the heavens, all are mere ants, an ant looking up at the sky. Isn't it the same everywhere? At these words, Su Jianting was taken aback. He didn't expect Utai, this barbarian, to utter such philosophical words. Seeing his confusion, Utai explained, this isn't something I said. It was said by noble Lord Jin from southern Ouyang. He said that very foolish people should not look up at the sky often, as it tends to make them even more foolish. They forget that they dwell in the dust, and forget to toil for their livelihood. Very clever people also should not look at the sky too often, as they can become lost in it. Su Jianting, are you a clever man or a foolish one? Hearing this, Su Jianting hurriedly replied, I am but a moderate man. Utai scoffed lightly, then looked up at the sky and slowly said, if one fears the heavens too much, they start to fantasize wildly. Like you all, when a meteor streaks by, you wonder if it's a sign from the heavens. When several meteors fall, the sovereign even issues inexplicable edicts confessing faults. Of course, having no reverence for the heavens isn't good either. Just like my father, who held no reverence in his heart and even ordered the totems and family emblems of the Aru family to be burned. Urutai's gaze turned cold, his tone tinged with anger. Know this, our Aru royal family has soared the skies and received the god's protection precisely because of the strength and wildness of the wolf and the eyes and wings of the eagle. So, burning our family totem was a desecration to the gods. From now on, I will re-establish our family totem. The Skywolf Eagle totem will also become the banner of our new kingdom. At these words, Su Jianting suddenly became tense. Years ago, the burning of the Skywolf Eagle totem was their Su family's idea, aimed at diluting the totem's influence and weakening the ruling authority of the Aru royal family until they could eventually swallow the entire Chang nation. Now, Urutai's words were clearly a warning to them not to harbor any foolish dreams. Thinking this, Su Jianting quickly prostrated himself on the ground, respectfully saying, Great King, you are wise. Tonight, I will order the production of the Skywolf Eagle royal banner. Utai shook his head and scoffed. No need. That banner can wait until after we've destroyed Aruna. Tomorrow morning, we set out to completely annihilate the Aruna tribe. The day after, my main forces will enter Yu Kingdom, meet up with your father, and together we'll sweep through the entire western celestial province, making King Ning Yuanxian weep. At this point, Utai paused, then asked with a murderous look in his eyes, Su Jianting, I've already placed my sister in your bed. Why haven't you slept with her? Do you find her ugly? Hearing this, Su Jianting shuddered and quickly replied, I am tired. I will go back to the tent now and sleep with the princess. Utai, upon hearing this, smiled satisfactorily, and before leaving, he didn't forget to remind, get some rest early after you're done. We have a tough battle to fight tomorrow. That night, Su Jianting held his breath, forced a smile, and slept with the princess. In fact, the princess wasn't ugly, it's just, her body odor was too strong. Several times, he almost vomited, but there was no choice. For the sake of my family's great cause, I, Su Jianting, must sacrifice myself. The next morning, just as the sky began to lighten, Utai had already led 40,000 troops quietly to a mountain near the Snow Mountain tribe, his gaze sweeping over the camp below. When he saw the Skywolf Eagle totem banner standing in the camp, his face instantly darkened. At that moment, his gaze was fixed on that banner. The terrifying pressure emanating from him made one shudder. Aruna, daring to covet my throne, and using the Skywolf Eagle totem as your tribe's banner, are you worthy? Immediately following, he swung his arm and shouted loudly, all generals, follow my command. Flatten this Snow Mountain tribe. Leave no one alive. As soon as his words fell, he led the cavalry charge into the valley towards the Snow Mountain tribe. However, just 5 miles from the tribe, a massive battalion of monk soldiers suddenly blocked their path from the north side of the valley. Utai immediately ordered his cavalry to halt, and looking closely, the leader was Kuan the ascetic. These monks, weren't they the monk soldiers from the Great Calamity Temple? At that moment, Kuan the ascetic ascetic also noticed Urutai's army and quickly stepped forward, smiling in greeting with a bow. "King of Chang, I hope you are well." Hearing this, Utai responded with a forced smile. "All is well. What brings Master Kunan here?" Kunan the ascetic replied in a calm tone. "We are making a return trip to the Great Calamity Palace." Upon hearing this, Utai burst out laughing. "What a coincidence. I was also planning to visit the Great Calamity Palace, even thinking of restoring it as the royal palace for my new kingdom." Kunan the ascetic's mouth twitched sharply. This guy really is an arrogant one. But in order to win over Urutai's army, he had to suppress his anger and managed a strained smile as he said, "Actually, I have another matter here, to eliminate Shen Lang." Utai was startled, but before he could speak, Su Jianting rode up on his horse. "You say Shen Lang is also here?" Kunan the ascetic nodded. "That's right, that little beast is currently within the Snow Mountain tribe. King of Chang, I propose we collaborate and set aside our dispute over the Great Calamity Palace for now. After we kill Shen Lang, we can discuss further. How does that sound?" Seeing that their goals aligned, Utai and Su Jianting exchanged looks and quickly agreed. Following this, the 2,000 monk soldiers of the Great Calamity Temple and Urutai's 40,000 troops charged together towards the Snow Mountain tribe. Atop the stone walls, Aruna was already prepared. When Urutai's army came within range, she did not hesitate to order, "Fire the arrows." With that command, thousands of arrows, like lightning, shot towards the Chang King's cavalry. In an instant, the enemy suffered heavy casualties. However, the vast difference in numbers between the two sides was insurmountable, and the advantage lasted only a few minutes. At this time, Utai was swiftly waving his steel sword, blocking the incoming arrows, and then shouted, "Everyone, attack with full force, destroy the stone wall." Suddenly, 20,000 cavalry charged furiously, each wielding a hammer. They aimed to use the momentum of their warhorses to smash through the defensive stone wall with their hammers. Seeing this scene, Urutai's mouth curled into a cold smirk. "My dear sister, just wait for your death. With over 40,000 troops, even if it's by sheer numbers, we'll drown your mere 3,000.